lot of Canadians think that, like our southern neighbours, Canada has one election every 4 years. This actually isn't the case. In Canada, federal elections are scheduled every 4 years, but that's not the whole story. In parliamentary democracies like ours, elections can actually happen anytime. Exciting, isn't it? So why are these unplanned elections triggered? Will we have an unscheduled election soon? Let's take a look. Hi, you're watching Gabby on Government. I'm Gabby and I'm an ordinary Canadian on a journey to learn about my government. I'm so happy you're joining me on today's journey where I'll be talking about unplanned elections. Unplanned elections, also known as snap elections, or calling an election, is when an election occurs earlier than scheduled. So the first question is, when are elections scheduled? This is actually not as straightforward as you might think. The Constitution says elections can't be any more than 5 years apart. But over time, the accepted convention has become that elections shouldn't occur any more than 4 years apart. In 2011, the Conservatives made that convention law, so now elections are scheduled every 4 years after the previous election on the third Monday of October. So, for example, Canada's next federal election is scheduled for October 16th, 2023, 4 years after our last election in 2019. But I wouldn't mark your calendars just yet. There have been whisperings that the current minority government may soon call an election. More on that later. There are two reasons an election might be called before the planned date, and they both happen when there is a minority government. Remember, a minority government means the party in power has more seats than all the other parties, but still less than half the total seats. This means they have to have cooperation from other parties to pass the bills they want and to stay in power. This is sort of a complicated concept, so watch my video on minority and majority governments if you want to learn more. The first reason that an election might be called before the planned date is the party thinks they've become significantly more popular since they were elected. The minority government is really confident that if they were to have an election, they could level up and win a majority government. This gain in popularity could come from many places. Maybe a competing party had a big scandal, or there was a global pandemic and the government gave everyone out of work $2,000 per month. Talking in hypotheticals here. But a government calling an election comes with a risk. If the party in power isn't as popular as they think, or the election is particularly grueling for the party in power, they can lose power altogether. This happened to Prime Ministers Laurier in the early 1900s and Turner in 1984. So, in summary, the Prime Minister may choose to call an election to try to gain more power, a majority government, but they also risk losing power altogether. The second reason an election might be called is because the minority government in power can no longer pass what it wants in Parliament, called losing confidence. Remember, because minority governments don't have 50% of the seats in Parliament, they have to work with other parties to get things passed. And if you can't pass things in Parliament, you can't do your job. You have lost the confidence of the House. So how does a party know if they have lost confidence? This is where things get a little bit complicated, so pay close attention. Sometimes there is a direct vote in Parliament whether or not the other parties have confidence in the government. Literally, they ask the House, do you think this government should continue? If the majority vote no, the Prime Minister is required to resign and an election is called. But it's not always so straightforward. There are some bills that the House votes on that are classified as confidence bills. Voting on some random bill on, artificial intelligence isn't classified as a confidence bill. In other words, if the bill on artificial intelligence is voted down, an election won't be called. Most bills that involve money are classified as confidence bills, as well as the vote on the throne speech. Yes, Parliament votes on the throne speech. If one of these types of confidence bills doesn't pass, the Prime Minister is required to resign, and, you guessed it, an election is called. Interestingly, most prime ministers who have had to resign due to no confidence have done so because their money bills were rejected, rather than a direct confidence vote. Canadians can be so passive-aggressive. So, to summarize, elections are scheduled every 4 years, but they can happen any time before the scheduled date. There are two main reasons that an election may be called. The first is that a minority government thinks it's gained enough popularity to level up to be a majority government. The second reason is that the other parties come together and vote out the current government, either directly through a confidence vote or through voting against a confidence bill. Now, you may know we currently have a minority government, the Liberals under Trudeau, so we are at risk of having a snap election at any time. In this case, it seems like the snap election reason is more likely. The pandemic caused a significant increase in popularity for the Liberals. The Liberals may want to take a chance and call an election in hopes that this new popularity could cause them to gain ultimate power, a majority government. But Trudeau has a problem. He knows that calling a snap election during a pandemic could make him vulnerable to valid criticism about exposing voters and poll workers and possible decreased voter turnout. I've been hearing whisperings of either a spring or fall election, but the only person who knows when the election will happen for sure is Trudeau himself. So, what do you think? Would you vote for the Liberals if they called an election this year? Should Canada be more like the States and only have elections on fixed dates every 4 years? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm not a civics expert, so if I got something wrong, or you want to add something, let me know in the comments. I think learning about civics is super important, so if you want to help other people find my content, I would be so grateful if you would like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thanks again, and see you next time.